Welcome back to another edition of the Educational AD Podcast. We couldn't do these without the incredible support of our sponsors, and we want to start by saying thank you to all of them. First, thanks to our diamond sponsor, Varsity Brands, including BSN, Varsity Spirit, and Herff Jones. Varsity Brands, elevating student experiences in sport, spirit, and achievement. We also want to thank our platinum sponsors, including Ephesus Lighting, innovating a brighter future at every level. Gilman Gear, always a step ahead. Camp Mobile, where teams communicate better. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. And Vital Signs, bring student achievements to life. Thanks to all of our great sponsors. Hey, welcome back everyone to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest today is Stacey Segal. Stacey is a certified master athletic administrator, and she's the assistant director of athletics for the Dallas Independent School District. Stacey, welcome to the program.
Hi, Jake. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh gosh, I've been wanting to get you on for a long time. Well, as you know, the life of an athletic director, especially these days, is very busy. So we're going to jump right in. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you went to school and college, and maybe how a love of sports led to that first teaching and coaching job.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Bryan, Texas, a small central Texas town, about an hour north of Houston. There were about 50,000 individuals that lived in that town, and at that time it was actually Bryan College Station. Now it's evolved to College Station Bryan, with Texas A&M University being there. So again, small town, went to Bryan High School. At that time there was about 2,000 students and only one high school. But from that point on, I had the opportunity to play Little League softball, and that was really kind of what was around. Club ball at that time in my area, softball was not in the high schools, and so I was fortunate to learn and begin to love the game of softball at the age of 9, and that was really the only sport that I played at that time. But was fortunate from then to go to the University of Oklahoma. My parents told me way back when, you can go to any school, but you can't go to the University of Texas. And that was that love-hate relationship. And I guess I took it seriously because I jumped in at that time to OU, spent a year there at OU, and then was fortunate to come home because family definitely is important. And ended up at Texas A&M, graduated from A&M, went on to pursue a master's at that University of Texas, Tyler. And then actually this past year, after I guess right at about the age of 50, I decided that I'm going to go pursue an MBA. So I went back to school, and now I'm pursuing an MBA at Louisiana State University at Shreveport.
Wow. Very cool to see you having a chance to get that extra degree.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about your transition from teaching and coaching into athletic administrator.
Okay. Well, I think that I kind of took the unconventional route. Actually, when I graduated from A&M, I did not go into public education. I was fortunate to spend 11 years as a head college softball coach. And during those times, I spent 10 years overseas as well, coaching softball, having the opportunity to take kids from different universities. We'd meet in the airport. I didn't know who they were. And we would start from JFK, go overseas, and spend 2 weeks to a month playing the international competition. And learned a lot during that time, learned a lot about just different cultures, how different we are from other cultures as well. And obviously seeing how the sport of softball at that time had not yet really evolved to the international competition. So with that, I left collegiate athletics, jumped into public education, I want to say 2003. So now I'm starting my 27th year in education, and was fortunate at that time. I knew that I did not want to leave the Dallas, Texas, Dallas Metroplex area. And so jumped into a female coordinator role at that time. And then with just some promotions and just some time, got my feet wet. I decided that, we have so many kids that really need to be served. And I found a home in Dallas. And I love our students.
Well, I know you're doing some great things there in Dallas. That's interesting about the international experience. Back in the 80s and 90s, when I was a high school football coach, I was part of a group that took high school football players over to England during spring break, and we'd tour and travel, and we'd play British clubs in American football. Just a great experience. And you talked about the culture and helping grow in the sport. What a great experience that must have been.
It really was. I've been able to develop some lifelong friendships. At that time, it actually worked out really well for me. I was coaching collegiately, and so I'd go overseas, I'd find some kids, I'd bring them back to the States to play. And my trip was all expenses paid because I was actually on a recruiting trip at the collegiate level. And so, as I said, I've really been able to just develop some lifelong partnerships, get really involved at that time with USA Softball. And that has been real fortunate because it's dwindled down to the high school level, at least being able to communicate, if we have kids that want to compete at the next level, or even mentors or bring in clinics to our kids in Dallas. I've been able to do that over the last couple of years.
Very cool. You just mentioned mentors, and in our business, we always talk about the importance of leadership and developing that next generation. Who were some of your mentors, growing up, teachers or coaches or people that you worked with or worked for?
Well, I'd say my first mentor by far were my parents. And again, I know you have to put them in there. My mom passed, I think it's been 12 years ago, but she was my rock. And I think they instilled in me just that hard work ethic. Professionally, I would say to start with, Sonny McLennan. Sonny passed, I think it's been 2 years, but Sonny was my first club ball coach. Obviously, growing up, softball was not real big in our area. And I think Sonny used a little bit of reverse psychology. He came to me and he said, Stacey, nobody wants you to be on the team. None of the coaches agree. But I'm going to stick with you, but you're going to have to work as hard as you possibly can. And until this day, he taught me so much about just hard work and perseverance. And he really followed me through my career, coaching collegiately, playing collegiately, and even more when I became an athletic director, having the ability to come back and talk to the kids. There's so many more. I was fortunate to serve in a principalship role. And so my first principal, Cindy Goodsell, was really a great mentor. I think the thing that I really loved about Cindy was that she allowed you to agree to disagree. She wasn't a yes ma'am individual, but she also said, hey, do you want to learn budget? Then here, take this budget and go learn. She allowed us to sit into every single meeting we possibly wanted to, every leadership meeting. She really gave you the reins. But she was also stern to say, look, this is not the right way to do it. But it was a one-on-one conversation. And I think that was really important. Actually, I think I read something you posted on one of your posts that I liked, and actually it's on that. It was the proactive coaching quote that, talked about tell my mistakes to me, not to others. Because, my mistakes, I think, were to be corrected by me, not for others. And that was really important. Cindy kind of, mentored that. And obviously at the athletic administration level, there's so many mentors that I can name. I've been fortunate in the DFW and Region 3 area. There's so many talented ADs that we've been able just to, bounce ideas off of on. We've got a group message going on. It's been going on all summer of just lifting people up. Hey, how's it going today? What's your plan for COVID? How are you doing today? And so there's just so many to name, at least at the collegiate level. And then, you know, it wouldn't do any justice if I didn't say professionally as well as personally. You know, Annette Scoggin, who was the past president of the NIAAA, was also a large mentor. She was also my colleague. So she worked in the same office and the capacity with me for a number of years. And she not only was a colleague, but she was also a mentor, because I really liked the path that she took and taught me how to grow. And I think that it was really important.
It's always great to, you know, be able to look back and acknowledge the people that touched our lives and continue to touch our lives, both, as you mentioned, personally and professionally. You mentioned that you didn't have, let's say, a traditional path into athletic administration, but you've certainly been involved in athletics a long time. And now as an athletic director, my next question is, in the past, let's just say maybe 10 years, how have you seen the day-to-day job of the school-based athletic director change? You know, what's different now than from 10 years ago as far as things athletic directors deal with?
Well, I'd say right now, in this time, risk management, I think, is the first thing that comes to mind for us. Is that, you know, everyone used to say it was, you know, books and buses. At least they used to say that as a, you know, a behavior at that time. But I do think from a risk management perspective, we have so many different avenues that we have to really pay attention to and wrap our hands around, whether it is tracking concussions and doing that on a daily basis. I'm really making sure that our facilities and turf are up to code with GMAX as well. I think communication right now in the many different social media platforms that definitely has changed for us. Now with the Zoom and Google Meets and all the different platforms, I don't think athletic directors really had to be experts in those of how to do that. And I think that the different ways that athletic directors have communicated just recently have really, really changed. The other thing I think is really, from my perspective, and I love so much, professional development has really changed. We're so much more about being just a coach. And I love that, but there is a professionalism about being an athletic director as well as a coach. And I think the expectations of really being an expert in your field and given that true credibility for our coaches and our ADs has changed. And I think the expectations have always been there, but now I think they're at a higher grade. So us having all the professional development that's available to us, math teachers go to PD, English teachers go to PD. I also feel like now our coaches and our ADs, it's expected, and they're expected to come back and share. And so I'd say really just kind of those three areas, I've really seen a big jump in what's important and what's expected.
Let's go and continue down that path. You know, obviously, you know, you are very active at your state level. You're active with NIAAA, and you know, you've achieved, you know, that highest ranking of a certified master athletic administrator. Talk a little bit about your journey from first getting involved at the state to beginning to take LTI courses, and ultimately, you know, just share briefly, you know, your CMAA project.
Sure.
I think it's important for our younger ADs to kind of hear the journeys and the stories of the ADs that have come before them.
Absolutely. Well, after 20 years, as I said before, Annette Scoggin introduced me to the NIAAA. I spent, and it's kind of, I think back, I'm like, wow, I was in athletic administration for 20 years and public education. I didn't know the NIAAA even existed. And so I felt like I was to the point where, okay, you can do this with your eyes closed. And I like to think that I'm a continuous learner, and education is important to me. And so I joined the NIAAA in 2014. And I was fortunate to take a class in Arlington, which I guess they had earned a grant. And I walked out of the class 4 hours later and I went, oh my gosh, my brain was just fried. There was just so much information. I wanted to go back immediately and implement all these new systems and policies at your local level. And so I did attend my first conference in Orlando, and that was the first one in Orlando. And I remember, Jake, I left the conference and everyone's like, "Hey, how was the conference?" I'm like, I really don't know, because I took I took every single class I possibly could take. I didn't have any social activities. I was up at the 7:30 a.m. class, was in there till 7 o'clock. I was exhausted, but I was intrigued. And so through some grants that our district had been fortunate to receive, and returning to conferences and webinars, I jumped right in. I mean, head first. And I was able to get my RAA, my CAA, my CMAA. I wanted to get more involved. And so I went to one of the committee meetings at the conference, and I filled out the application. Never did I think that they would call my name. Well, before I was on the coaches education committee, I actually got a call. Do you want to teach at the national level? And I'm like, what? I haven't even taught at the state level yet. And so I'm going on my third year now of teaching 640, the role of an urban athletic administrator at the national level. I'm on the coaches education ad hoc committee. At the state level, same thing. I was fortunate to have some mentors. Rusty Dowling, same thing. I reached out to them and I said, I want to get involved. This is something I want to do. And so he was fortunate, and he put me on the NIAAA liaison committee for Texas High School. Taught 502 at the state level, and I will happily say I'm running for NIAAA secretary if we have a conference, hopefully in Florida this December. Yeah, just jump right in.
No, I'm smiling because that is just so like my own path.
Yeah.
I was a head football coach and athletic director for years, and probably in that order. You know, I think I did a good job as an AD manager, but when I took a job at another school just as the athletic director, that was my first exposure to our state and national organization. And just like you, I was sucked in immediately, and ended up, got, as you know, I'm on certification, and teach the middle school courses. So, I think you hit it on the head right at the very end. Get involved. Ask people. Hey, how can I help? And you will be rewarded. So, what a great story! I love hearing that.
And I think one thing that was really great, and I can't, or I said we can't really thank the NIAAA enough in our grants. Last year, was fortunate with again our colleagues Annette and Sandra and Dr. Langston and Sherry Stice to create an athletic administrator professional development kind of session. And it really was about bringing, we had 85 individuals from across the state of Texas who really wanted to pursue athletic administration. And it was phenomenal. They were able to come in and teach some classes and really give some coaches an opportunity to see what the NIAAA was really about. And so kudos to them and thank you for everyone. And again, I mean, I love following your podcast and seeing your quotes every day. I'm guaranteed, Jake, that when I open up the NIAAA link every day in my email, the first one I read is from Jake. So it's awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. And you'll also notice that, very few of those are original, but I'm a great
Okay.
borrower of other people's great ideas. And again, we're recording this early September. I loved your comment about our episode that dropped today with Ann Campbell, that you actually knew her from back in the day. That's very cool.
Well, it was funny. We were in a forum last December, and she sat next to me, and we just kind of kept staring at each other. And I'm like, God, why? That I know you, but I'm not real sure I know you. And I just introduced myself, and I'm like, did you used to coach college softball? And we're getting old, but that was a really long time ago. And Ann was coaching collegiately, and I think I was just that little kid that wanted to play at the next level. And so, you idolize those coaches and you find out everything you can about them. And it was fantastic to have the ability to reconnect with her. last conference and really share, share stories and just see how journeys cross, even 30 years later. So it was great. So it was fun to listen to her podcast this morning. So hi, Ann.
Yeah, I actually was Ann's reader for her CMAA project
Okay.
several months ago, and then that led to me asking her if she would present this past spring at our Florida State Conference, which was one of the very few virtual conferences
Right.
with COVID. So again, just a small world, but a great network for all of us to be able to touch base with these folks. Let's go and talk a little bit about COVID. As I mentioned, we're recording this early September, so fall seasons across the country are beginning to unfold. And we've seen a variety of responses from state associations and from governors. Some are business as usual. Others have literally moved football to spring and baseball to fall. So what's happening right now in Texas, what's happening in Dallas as far as schools reopening and as far as the sports calendar?
Right. Well, as you know or may not know, obviously we're governed by the University Interscholastic League, and that's the UIL. And UIL has been incredible. They've taken the stance that we're having sports. They've pushed some of the start dates back, but we have not arranged, at least at the varsity level, any sports in a different type of season. Football, everything's staying in place, just doing so at different start points, delaying those. In Dallas ISD, we're large, and so 22 high schools, 32 middle schools. Right at that time, we were in a really hotbed red area of COVID cases, and so Dallas actually is starting tomorrow virtual. So we will open up tomorrow virtually, and we are going to stay in a virtual environment until October the 6th. That's Dallas's plan. However, also tomorrow is a phenomenal day for our athletic programs. And so we did get the call that our varsity sports with our fall sports can start strength and conditioning tomorrow and go back. So we were open in the summer, closed in the summer, open, but we are going to go to strength and conditioning starting tomorrow. We will then bring back our junior varsity a week later. And then we're taking a look at our middle schools, I want to say toward the end of September as well. But for our perspective, what's really changed for us is the participation numbers for many of the sports. So for example, I'll just use cross country as an example with COVID. No tournaments. We're allowed to have 8 teams. Our varsity and JV cannot participate at the same site. They have to be off site. It really is, no medals, pre-screening any spectators. We're at a 50% capacity right now for our spectators. And so what we've really done, and I'm so proud of our campus athletic coordinators in Dallas ISD, is every campus has a reentry plan, as does our district, but every campus was required to do a reentry plan for their practice as well as a reentry plan if they're going to host games on their campus. And so that's a lot of reentry plans, and they're all very different because all their sites are different. They look different. But again, I cannot thank them and our colleagues enough in our athletic department. Our athletic trainers have been phenomenal. And so they've been at the forefront of helping reevaluate those plans, our health services department in our district. But right now it really has just been educating, go fast, but slow down. You know what I'm saying? We're really like, oh, you got to go, but you really have to kind of step back and make sure we really dot our I's and cross our T's with these plans. UIL has some risk mitigation factors that are important, and it's very important that our teams follow them. And we don't know. I think right now it's just read the news, communicate with your colleagues of, hey, what's really worked, what hasn't worked. But the reentry plans are there, and there's a lot of support and there's a lot of education. You just have to slow down, make sure you read everything. And, we are so fortunate that our kids are actually having the ability to compete. Whether we agree with it or not, we're back. COVID's not going away. And so, all we can do right now is cross our fingers and hope that our kids are going to be safe, and that at the end of the day, reentry plans, our goal is to keep our kids safe, and our coaches safe and our faculty safe. And, it gives me some goosebumps because it's frightening. I'm scared, but it is what it is. And that's our number one goal, just safety. And, sometimes just got to slow down.
I appreciate you sharing all that, and obviously wish you guys the best of luck as you begin to reopen. Florida is we have a plan, but it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
And so we've had games, we've had some districts that haven't even opened yet. So
Right.
Again, it's a work in progress, as you've said, and watching everybody else to see what works and things to avoid. Another question we've been asking our EDs is in the area of social issues, social awareness. Last spring, we certainly saw an increased awareness with the events in Minneapolis and Atlanta, and now recently in Wisconsin. What's something from your perspective, what's something that we can do as athletic administrators? What can we do better with our kids, our coaches, our communities in this area of social awareness, social issues?
Sure. I think the first thing is listen. There are a lot of different issues, a lot of different views. But as an athletic administrator, it's our job to really support our kids regardless of their beliefs or not. That's our job. And I think the very first thing that we can do as athletic administrators is listen, and more importantly, educate yourself. There are so many books that are available for you to read, for your colleagues. And so you have to keep an open mind. And I know sometimes we get a lot closed-minded of what's going on. And I think a lot of times is don't assume that what someone's going through, that their viewpoints. I'm a Caucasian female, but I work in an urban district. I have a biracial child. And so your viewpoint still might be mine. And I think it's important that we are able to share those views and, just be open to, everyone's belief. And, I think that's the biggest thing we can do is we can educate. So whether it's social injustice, whether it's racial discrimination, I think right now, there's a new diversity class, as you know, with the NIAAA as well. And I was fortunate to get to send in some information to that committee as well. Whether it's immigration, which we do a lot with, obviously in Texas and our border states, and our kids that are undocumented, that are athletes, and they were scared because, some of the programs that are coming around, and they're afraid if they go home to see their families that they're going to get locked at the border and not be able to come back to school, or they're not going to be able to apply for scholarships. Whether it is religious, same type of situation. You have to be open-minded, and be aware if you have kids that are Jewish in your school. And we talk about just racial diversity, be cognizant if you're going to schedule a homecoming on Rosh Hashanah evening, or, Yom Kippur, or if a kid's got to miss class. So don't just assume that everybody is like you. And I think that's really the biggest point I think of all this I can really take out, is that you have to be open-minded. I think one of the recommendations that I would make, and I think it's really important as we talk about just different platforms, is, because of the Zoom platform, there's so many different things that we can do to grow. And we are doing something that I like in just one of my friends groups, and it's just kind of a caring community. People get on, I don't know them. and it's really a small group, 6 or 7, guided discussion on a topic, and you talk, and people from all different backgrounds, and you really have the opportunity to ask questions, and I think that's important. So whether it's through Nomad, which is one of the new Twitter, or even global women's community, there was a really, really great meeting this past week that we had some great speakers on. I think you just need to educate yourself and not be afraid to ask questions. So
Well,
it's a touchy subject, it really is, but I think you have to not be afraid to ask the right questions and just listen.
No, again, listen, communication, you
Sure.
talked about, being aware. Absolutely. Okay. Let's go and shift gears a little bit. What are some of the things that you think that your district, your coaches really do a great job, like, best in the country job? What's something that you're really proud of?
Well, I'd say first and foremost, our athletic trainers. There's no doubt about that. They're an extension of us. We have, with as large as we are, we have central sites, and we have an athletic trainer over a central site, and then we have a campus athletic trainer, and they really are in the trenches every single day, and we lean on them, and have had to lean on them recently this summer of, hey, not everybody really wants that responsibility, but you know what, if a kid tests, you've got to follow that chain. The other thing that I think our coaches do is, they really network very, very well. And, Dallas is kind of its own community. And I think the one thing is that there's so many, there's over 950 coaches in our district. And I think PD is important. There's no doubt about it. It's the most important thing to me. But I feel like they really now realize that there's some incredible professional development out there, but there's also some phenomenal coaches that have so much to share. And so recently, even through this platform, the clinics that our coaches have been able to do and just share with each other's, bounce ideas off each other's. Our feeder pattern alignment is something that we're really getting heavy into recently, which has not been at our forefront. And so they've done a really good job of working with their middle schools and growing those younger coaches. But, I think one of the best things that they've done is that they understand kids from really kind of all different backgrounds. They're in the trenches, kids that don't eat, kids that their only hot meal is at campus, kids that don't have equipment. And so they're great fundraisers. There's never a time really they've said, hey, we can't do that because we don't have that. Most of them have found ways to do that and be creative, and they've bounced off resources. And so I think that's one of the great things is that sometimes that entitlement is not always, I don't feel like we have that. Now, granted, we want it sometimes, it's nice, but them having the ability to realize that, hey, you don't need to have this incredible piece of equipment or this, they're nice, this $50 million stadium or weight room to be successful. And so they've earned those, and those things are coming for us. But as of right now, we what we have, we use, and we use it effectively.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning trainers. I think sometimes they're the unsung heroes of our profession, particularly these days.
Sure.
Well, guys, Stacey, this has been great. Like I said, I've been trying to get you on the show for a while, but we're not done yet.
Okay.
We always like to wrap up with what we call the athletic director's toolbox.
Okay.
You're certainly an experienced and award-winning athletic director.
Thank you.
But your job right now is to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job. But I'm only going to let you put 3 items in their toolbox. What's going to go into Stacey Segal's athletic director toolbox?
Find a mentor. I think that's in the toolbox most definitely. Personal, professional, someone that you can bounce ideas off with. That we don't steal ideas in this profession. We share, as you said. I share your quotes pretty much on a daily basis, Jake. I think that's the first thing. The second toolbox is I think you have to hire good people around you. I think that's really important. I think the hardest job, in my opinion, at some point is to be an assistant AD, because you have your ideas. But as a loyalty, you've got to do what's done. But I think it's important to hire good people around you that you feel like can go do their job and you empower to do so. I think we're professionals. We don't need to micromanage. Be accountable, but go hire good people. And then I think the final thing we talk about is learn to communicate. And I'm going to throw that fourth one in there. You got to listen. But you have to learn to communicate because you're talking to so many stakeholders, whether it's the media, whether it's marketing, whether it's parents, whether it's going up for a bond in a board meeting. You have to be able to articulate yourself. And so I'd say, take some opportunities to proofread, spend some time on the little bitty things that maybe you took for granted, of how to draft a letter appropriately, but learn to communicate, and whether that's written, oral, find a mentor, absolutely. And then, hire good people, and not just good people, competent, good, articulate, same thing, the things that you're pretty much looking for. Taskmasters, I like to call them.
Great advice. Thank you. Stacey, again, it's been a pleasure. All the best as, the Dallas schools reopen. And again, thanks for being on the program today.
Thanks for having me, Jake. Hope I get to see you in Florida this December.
Absolutely. We're pressing forward. There's going to be a national conference. Okay. Well, as always, to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Join us again next time on the Educational AD Podcast. Thanks again for listening to the Educational AD Podcast. Remember, these episodes are also available on YouTube on the Educational AD channel. Thanks again.